joy she gives us to visit today. Well, Grandma, we decided to jump in the car and take a road trip to Amarillo to visit you. You're my dad's mom, my Grandma Jerry, and you have such a special place in my heart because when I think of the good old days, like this sermon series, I think of your house here in Amarillo. Growing up when I was a little kid, I could not contain my excitement when we were pulling onto your street, seeing you and Grandma waving on the front porch as we would pull up, running into your house. There was this warmth, there was this welcome home atmosphere, peace, and you have such an amazing legacy. You have 3 boys who are, one of them is my dad, I have 2 uncles, all 3 in ministry. They have kids and grandkids serving the Lord, and when I think about you, I just think about legacy, I think about consistency, and I just wanted to ask you a few questions because you were the one I was drawn to for this sermon series. When I describe your home like that, when I was a little kid, how did you and Grandpa create that?
Well, as I've said before, that consistency is my word. And it was something that was instilled in me by my family when I was growing up. My dad, especially, always said, be consistent in whatever you do, whether it's in discipline, but mainly it was in our church attendance. And that was the background, I think, for what my kids are today and what my whole family is how consistent we were in going to church. My kids said we never missed a service.
And church back then, talk about how many times a week you went. What was church to you guys back then?
Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, sometimes Friday night. Revivals at Canals. One was with Jimmy Swagger, and that one lasted about 6 weeks. We went every night.
I know there's Sunday school. I mean, so when someone was consistent with church back then, it wasn't just like one service on a Sunday and leaving. It was like, that's what we do, big part of your life. So that's what you did with your boys. Walk us through how that started for you. Why did you and Grandpa have that kind of standard for your kids? That probably started with your parents.
It did start with my parents because I don't remember ever missing a service, and it was not easy for us because we lived on a farm and we were 2 miles off of the paved road. Many times I can remember us having to pull mud, but we went to church every time the door was open. And we were a muddy mess when we got there, but
There was 6 kids, right?
we had 6 kids, and many times we were all pushing to get a vehicle out of the ditch. That that has made a big impression on my life.
You know, many people have spoken about this regarding you and Grandpa. Grandpa passed away about 16 years ago now. And they talk so much about just the legacy of your house and what is your home and what's going on. And not everybody has this because you can't control people's salvation and outcomes. But right now, you have 3 sons. How many grandchildren do you have?
Well, I have 8 grandchildren.
You think, how about great-grandchildren now?
21.
21 great-grandchildren.
Yes.
And right now, I mean, there's a few babies, but right now, what's so amazing is every single one of those people are serving the Lord. The spouses and everybody. And
Every one of them.
every one of them.
It was amazing to me.
And again, you can't completely control the outcomes of all of that, but it is still something to speak to. And again, looking at that, I was just looking at a family picture a few minutes ago at your birthday party a couple of years ago when you turned 90, and all those people were there. And it's so emotional thinking about, okay, like I can imagine you sitting back and looking at your family going, we did it. It wasn't perfect. There were ups and downs. It got crazy, but we did it. How does that make you feel?
Well, a sense of pride, I guess. You know, and I don't know, sometimes I just don't even understand it myself.
Yeah.
But there again, I think being consistent and showing that to the kids and living that, you actually live it in front of your kids.
That's important too, because yes, it's consistency in church attendance, but it's also being consistent in the house. And that's another thing, you and Grandpa, I knew what I was getting with you and Grandpa every time I walked into your house. The consistent love and peace and investment from you. Grandpa would call all of us by our silly nicknames when we would walk in and high five and tickle and laugh. And there was just consistency. And then my dad talked about that with you guys. He just knew. He knew what the house was going to feel like when he walked in every time. You know, it's interesting because you have your parents creating that for you. You guys creating that for my dad, and then my parents creating that for us.
Exactly.
I never woke up on a Sunday and wondered, are we going to church today?
Yeah.
I never woke up wondering, what are my parents going to be like today? And then there was another aspect of this too, generosity to the house of God and in life has flowed through generations as well. And even what I've learned from my parents about tithing, my first paycheck, the house of God, God gets 10%. Walk through a little bit of even the consistency in some of those other categories like generosity.
Well, when we first married, we were pretty poor. And I don't know, my husband, I don't know if he was from another denomination, and I don't know how consistent he and his family were on tithing. But we didn't tithe. I think he felt at that time we just didn't have the money. But we discussed it, talked it over, and decided to give it a try. And it worked. For some reason, we went ahead and did it. And after that, we were very faithful on giving our tithing.
My dad tells stories of remembering, I guess on Sunday morning, seeing Grandpa over at the table, pulling out the checkbook, writing the check, and my dad as a little boy just always, and sometimes going over and asking him, what are you doing? Writing our tithe check, son. We're giving God our 10%, and my dad just carried that with him, and then that's what's taught to us. We've taught to our children as well, and it's a really cool thing to even watch our kids do.
Just modeling all this to your kids. You don't realize that they're watching everything you do.
Right. They are everything you do and don't do. And so when we think about culture, the culture in the home, and sometimes you even mentioned this earlier, it's a little bit hard to explain because it's like this invisible, like, I don't know exactly what we did right or wrong, I don't know. But culture is so important, and you create culture by consistency. You create in all those different categories. I think it's one of the main things. Every family has to decide, who are we going to be? What legacy are we going to pass on?
Exactly.
And speak to legacy for a minute. Like, what's the most important thing to you that you want people to remember you by, our family? Speak just a little bit about legacy, whatever is on your heart there.
That I was a kind, considerate person. And of course, my kids were a priority, and I wanted them to be a devout Christian. That was just always. I can remember, and this is kind of a funny story, that when Steve was a baby, I was so tender, I thought, well, what can I do for this baby? They were having a dedication, and it's kind of embarrassing to tell the story. I don't know whether Steve even knows it or not. But I got up and I almost ran to the front with that baby to have him dedicated. And it meant that much to me, and that was, I just wanted my kids to know the Lord, and I wanted them dedicated to Him for their great service.
And when you think about your boys now, all three full-time ministry, it's not full-time ministry necessarily the goal, but it's just a very cool thing to see. They were so open to God. They were able to hear the call to ministry. about them. My daughter, Hasley preached last week on Sunday, and that's your great grandchild. That's a pretty cool legacy, Grandma.
It's just trickled down from so far back in my family, my grandparents, then my parents, now us, and now you all. The legacy is so important.
Speak to this too, Grandma. When you think about, giving advice to young parents, talk just a moment about prioritizing prayer for your kids, and that's also part of the legacy. You had mentioned about your dad praying over you guys, with you guys, you praying for your kids. Talk to us about that.
Well, my dad I thought he was the best person in the world, but of course we were on a farm, and the school bus would always come out and pick us up. But before we went to school, he had us on our knees and he was praying over us. That we would have a good day. And that has made a big impression on me. But I think that's a very special thing that we can all do. Pray over your kids, before they go to bed at night. And it means so much to them. I think it gives them a lot of peace,
It does.
So it's important.
Another one of my most special memories of you was in adulthood for me. We were going through something with one of our kids, and they were just having a very hard time in life spiritually, and I was kind of at the end of my rope with it, and so desperate. And Mandy and I were fasting and praying. I remember walking out of my house one day out of the front door, and I just had this overwhelming sense that I need to call my grandma. And I was a grown man. This was just 5 years ago or so, and I called you, and I was just crying. I said, Grandma, and I told you what was going on. I said, I just need you to pray for my kid. And on that call, you prayed over her, and it was like you can feel the generational, power of prayer coming from a grandmother and the legacy of that. And when you prayed and you said amen, you said, Dustin, stay consistent. This will be okay. She's going to be okay. And I got off the phone that day and had so much peace. And sure enough, she's okay and thriving. And I think that's the power of legacy, where I can pick up a phone and call my grandma as a grown man. And just the prayers of your parents into you and Grandpa, into my parents, into us. And one day we'll have grandchildren. And that's what I want. And so that's the power of this. That's why we're doing a whole series on the good old days, because we've talked about it, but the good old days aren't just times we look at in the past. The good old days are right now. They're right now. And so I think I just want to say thank you so much for your time and allowing us to drive over here and interview you. You're so special to me, obviously, both my brothers, our whole family, and to our church. I don't even know if our church would be where we are right now if it weren't for you. So thank you, Grandma.
You're very welcome. It's been my pleasure.